What's up, guys? Good morning. So I just got done with Financial Journey's interview with David, the CEO of Mullen Company. I took a whole list of notes, literally listened to every single line, every single word that David said, and I'm going to share those notes with you and give you my honest opinion of how I think this interview went and really what I think for the future of Mullen Automotive. Before I do that, though, don't forget to drop a like. I would always appreciate that. Think about subscribing if you're not subscribed yet, and don't forget to grab your coffee. Here's mine. So first, let me say shout out to Financial Journey. Congrats, man. You did an absolutely amazing job with this interview, and this is a huge deal. So the interview opens up with a great question talking about production for the M1 and the M3, and this is what David said. The M3 will be produced, manufactured in July, and he said the M1 will start manufacturing in August, okay? And the M3 deliveries should be what they anticipate. He loves that word, anticipate. August and September for the M3. He went on to say, talk a lot about John. And John is who I like also. I've been talking a lot about John. John worked at Tesla. John worked at GM. He seems like a great person. He's in charge of the fleet for commercial, basically. And David was pumping him up, basically saying everything that he's done. He was the first 50 employees at Tesla. He handled, I think, the 3 vehicle at Tesla, the architecture around it. He also did over 30 years at GM. And David was saying he was fighting very hard and it took a long time to get him over at Mullen. So John is the man, and John is going to be handling a lot of this stuff with the Class 1 and Class 3 commercial vehicles. So I have good vibes about John. I also agree that Mullen's strategic, I think, power move in a way is that they went out there and hired key level executives from other companies, people that had the experience already, to potentially help create Mullen and make it a successful company just like Tesla and just like GM. Now, will it get as big as Tesla and GM? I don't know. I think if Mullen focuses on the Class 1 and Class 3 commercial vehicles, then I think we do have a good shot at being a very competitive EV company. So now let's talk numbers, because he gave legit numbers. Financial Journey asked about the capacity of what they're projected to have in 2023. And he said there should be 660 units now to the end of 2023 for Class 1. So they're gonna produce 660 units, and they're gonna produce 930 units now to the end of 2023 for Class 3. Moving on, he also said in 2024, 368 Class 1 one-seaters. And then David said people would wonder why a one-seater. Well, a lot of these vehicles are for last mile delivery, so they only need one seat. So they're gonna start producing one-seaters in 2024. 368 is what they are expecting. All right, so these aren't actual numbers, it's what they're expecting to do. Now they're gonna be doing 3,000 units in 2024 for Class 3. Now this is the more expensive vehicle. David also stated that, and this is for bigger commercial use, right? So then Financial Journey asked a question about share intel, because we have been getting shorted to death. They've been diluting us. I'm gonna get into the Series D preferred shareholders in a second, so stay tuned for that. But he asked about share intel, and this is what David said. He said they're doing their job. They made a public announcement stating that they're looking into this. And I remember when they made this announcement, it was literally like 3 months ago or even 4 months ago. And on the interview, David kept it short and sweet from what I took the notes of, and he said they're doing their job. My question is, are they really? Because like, this is pathetic. Like, look at the stock price. This makes no sense whatsoever. And even David kind of got defensive. I'm gonna jump all around on these notes for you guys, but he started to get a little bit defensive, which I'll get into in a minute, but it just doesn't seem accurate. This has never happened to other companies. And he did bring up some good things about SPACs and what Mullen is doing, which I'll get into. But moving on, Financial Journey asks, is Mullen NASDAQ compliant? This was his answer. I wanna be real clear about this. Mullen is fully compliant other than the minimum bid compliant, which is $1, like every other guy in the space except Tesla, which I don't think was a good response. You guys aren't like every other space out there, okay? You guys are below $1 twice now. You did a reverse stock split, and now you're trading at 11 cents. So I don't think this was a good response. He went on to say, we are going to work really hard to be compliant again. I've heard that before. It comes down to fundamentals. We've heard that before. He loves the word fundamentals. He said that in previous interviews. There's a lot of guys that just talk. You got to stop talking and put your head down and work. So from that response, do I believe they'll get over $1? I don't know if they truly care about it. David goes on to get kind of defensive, and he says, I get blamed for the economy. I want to do as much as I can to bring value to our shareholders. I've heard that before. Every time David has done interviews and he said things like what I've heard in this interview, the stock price has tanked from there. Now we're at all-time lows. So do I believe the stock price will tank again? Not as much as it has. I do think we are in a bottoming process, okay? It's really gonna take the news that we need. And if you've been a part of the channel, you know that I am staying here until I get very clear on production. I want to see them go into production. Yes, they have revenue. Yes, they sold 22 vehicles. That's great. That's gonna be on their next announcement for earnings, I believe. But I need to see production. Once I see production, I understand now that, okay, the company's actually producing vehicles. They're capable to produce vehicles, and now they can sell these vehicles. And I can see more of a long-term perspective with this company. Then a great question was asked, do you plan to buy Mullen shares? This was David's response. I can't answer that. If something like that were to happen, everyone would know at the same time. That's a good question, and we will be addressing the public soon. So what do you guys think? Do you think by him saying that's a good question and we will be addressing the public soon that he does plan to buy shares, or that was just his way to end that question? We go on to talk about shareholder meeting coming up. Why Delaware to Maryland? Great question. Maryland has no franchise tax is what David says. And as I kind of go deeper into this for you guys, my conclusion of David is he likes to save money. You can see that they've decreased their debt tremendously, okay? But he also talks like a lot about saving money. If I could save a dime here, if I can save some money here, why wouldn't I do that? And Maryland has no franchise tax, so that's a good move for our company to save some money. He goes on to say that protects company from hostile takeover also, which is a good point because they are so low, their market cap is so low. He also says that it doesn't make any sense. They have $250 million in the bank and their market cap is like 40 million or something like that. So that is a good point that the stock price doesn't align with what the company has in assets, which I've also stated in previous videos before. His exact words, I believe the share price doesn't reflect the actual price of the company. Have to be careful of a takeover. Now here's the number one question. Is dilution paused? Okay, because that's all we care about. Is dilution paused for the short term? We know companies dilute. Good companies dilute, but are they paused? This is how he explains it. He says, Series D shareholders exercised their last 100 million options and now they are gone. He said, we didn't have a lot of money, so they have been with us for 2 years since we went public. Basically, they had to use them to finance, okay? He thinks it's a group of people betting against the company that the company will fail. When he said those words, I think it's a group of people betting against the company that the company will fail. I'm betting that the company will win. That's what he said. He says, I don't know if that's shorting or you can call it whatever you want, but he thinks there's a group of people, and he wasn't very specific, but he said there's a group of people that are betting that the company will fail. And that's why the stock price is as low as it is. And I think there's a lot of shady business going on with Mullen Company. I think maybe someone's in David's ear. They're not letting him say a whole lot. Another thing I want to bring up is why was there so many freaking edits in this thing, okay? I know that's not FJ's fault. That's Mullen Automotive's fault, okay? Because I've also talked with people about certain things and a lot was taken out. Good things were taken out from this interview. So why did they have to take those good things out? David goes on to talk about the assets that they own, which is true. They have a lot of assets. They have buildings, they have real estate, they have a paint shop. He loves to talk about the paint shop. He said that in another interview. He brought up the stupid paint shop again. A lot of similarities from previous interviews. Seems like David is all about saving money. I think that's important to him. Says they haven't spent as much as other companies. He goes on to talk about all these other EV companies that have spent billions of dollars. And he said, I said a billion. We've probably spent $500 million, less than $500 million. Okay, so he's all about saving his money. We aren't like these other SPAC companies that don't have anything tangible. I thought this was a great point from David. Mullen has a good product. They honestly look like a solid company, okay? It's just the stock price, it does not correlate with what the company has accomplished and what I believe they will accomplish. So the stock is completely manipulated. And this is why I still cover Mullen Company, because I do think it's a good company. I think they could be successful if they could get through all this BS stuff that has been going on. And it seems like, from what David has said, they're gone. The bad financing thing that they had going on for 2 years is done. That was his answer to his dilution pause. Now I know, and I haven't really looked into the 8K yet, and I'm gonna make another video updating you guys on that, but I know dilution will happen again. It happens to all companies. Now he said a very important thing that he really feels strong about. I think everything we said we are going to do, we are going to do and then some. He's also said, I'm gonna keep my promises to people. He's employed almost 400 people and he's big on that. He goes on to talk about Bollinger and how they run a tight business. The CEO is a very smart man. He sold 3 businesses for profit, and that's very hard to do, apparently. I think one of the most important things that people want to know is, how are you going to get your money back? And FJ asked a good question. What would you say to people that are down 80 to 90% right now? And this is what David said. I'm going to work really hard till I drop dead for the early investors. How I do that is by delivering vehicles, delivering technology, getting new partnerships, and collecting on revenue. What I'm saying from what David said is, I agree that they have good partnerships. RDS, they've done great pilot runs. They have a lot, Loop Global, they have a lot of good opportunities that I think they can close on in the future. I also think they've done strategic new hires, which is really good for the company, like John, for example. The only 2 things that we're missing right now is delivering on product and more revenue, even though they did collect on revenue. But if we go back to what David said early in this interview, what is projected for 2023 and 2024, he also stated in this interview that they are going to deliver on every single promise that they've given to people. So what I would expect from this interview is that Mullen is going into production, Mullen is delivering vehicles, and they are collecting a ton of revenue. Now, if that happens, the stock price should move up. But the problem is this: they just dropped news that they sold 22 vehicles and collect on revenue, and the stock price tanked. So the only other conclusion to really getting Mullen back to where it's deserved to be priced, because their market cap is trash right now compared to the assets they own and the cash that's in the bank, from what David has stated, is they have to get these toxic lenders out of here. They have to get the people betting against Mullen out of here. And that's what David also stated, is he hopes that they leave. That's been Mullen's biggest problem, I believe. I don't think it's really a David problem, even though David isn't my favorite person. I don't think it's a Mullen automotive problem. I think it is these toxic lenders and these people betting against it and obviously shorting it to death. The last thing I'll say is, he said, our shareholders will be rewarded greatly from Bollinger alone. And I also feel the same way. I think Bollinger is a great company. They have an awesome product that I think is very attractive to people. So we'll see what happens. Of course, none of this is financial advice. I appreciate you guys for watching. We'll see you on the next one.